In your head, will you know when it's time to kind of pass the baton, and like, have you imagined how you want that to go down?
Oh yeah.
Dear God, Frank, are you also blind? Nah, with these cataracts, I might as well be. What's that, a woodpecker?
There's a whole
Comic books are a very hard medium to get into, despite how popular some of these movies and TV shows with these characters are. It can be really intimidating to not really know where to start, or like who to read, how to read it. Like, for example, why is he doing that? Why is she alive? I thought she just died. What's going on? It can be a real challenge. There's a long time-tested barrier to convert new readers into the books. I always try to give people the same kind of idea when I tell them to read comic books. Head into your local comic book shop, look around a bit at the walls and think of the characters or heroes that you like and see any that stick out to you. Grab that book, check the issue count, decide if you can handle jumping into the middle of it or not, and then just start reading. They expect new readers to come in all the time, so there's often small text blocks that explain anything that is more background information that would otherwise be unavailable. So just continue reading until you feel you had enough. I don't think there's anything wrong with dropping a comic if you're just not feeling it. There's less of a pressure to continue like a game or a TV show may have, so don't worry about stuff like that, especially if you're a new reader. And if you are curious about the little issue text boxes, go grab that book, whether it be a previous issue or another character entirely. It can be a really exciting rabbit hole to go down to, and I really highly recommend that. It's always fun to see what you pop up. If you want a more structured format, you can always start right where a new writer and creative team come onto a book. Let's say you're a really big fan of the Justice League comic in the 1990s, JLA, and during the 90s, you're kind of sort of interested in X-Men. You see them over on the shelves, and you really want to read them. But, oh no, there's like 16 straight years of X-Men stories with a very specific creative team. What am I going to do? But hey, look at this. That same writer from JLA has finished that book and has made his way over to X-Men with a brand new book. Now you can just jump right on and get one of the best X-Men stories ever told each month to month. I personally like to stick to this approach with a singular creative team's vision. I mean, sure, I can always start at the 1930s and just bullet read all the way through Wonder Woman and risk burning myself out of the medium forever, or I can stick with the one writer's vision at the character and stick with that. And now to talk about Spider-Man, a hero who needs no introduction. Countless movies, shows, toys, basketballs, everything. And a little bit of a fact about him, he actually has comic books of his very own. I've practically grown up with this character, watching Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 over and over again until the disc worn out. I had all the action figures I could ever have wished for. I probably wore a different Spider-Man shirt once a week every day during elementary school. He just means a lot to me. My first experience with the comics themselves was one of the issues of the 2000s JSM run, a run I'll be talking very fondly about later on in this video. Then later in middle school, I started legitimately reading comics monthly for the first time. One of them being the current issue of the Amazing Spider-Man titled The All New, All Different run by Dan Slott. This isn't all that special of a run looking back, but it's always going to hold a special place in my heart. And I always like when the costume shows up as an unlockable skin in a video game. Let's see, a couple years later, I read Spider-Man Life Stories by Chip Zdarsky. Up until right now, as I embark on my journey to start really reading Spider-Man comics. A sentiment I hope to pass on to any viewer of this video. Some have a little bit more action, some have a little more melodrama, some write him happily married, and some are forbidden to do so by their bosses. I wanted to make a nice and semi-comprehensive video on where to start reading the character if you just came out of the movie and are a little intimidated by all the sheer amount of issues. I think my initial approach of just grabbing a book does not work for this character specifically, at least in the current year of 2026. He's a shell of his former self, and editorial will not let him do anything productive or interesting because they want to sort of just keep him as this pristine mascot for all of eternity, which is another reason why nothing I recommend will be anywhere past like 2005. And if you don't like that and you want some more newer stories, I wish you luck with these pity recommendations. You can try Brand New Day, All New, All Different, Nick Spencer's run, Zeb Wells, and The New Guy. Superior Spider-Man is a semi-more recent issue, and it's really cool, but it's a bit of a departure, and I would save it for later in this video. Now, I want to preface that this is for the main Spider-Man book, The Amazing Spider-Man, that started in 1963 and is about to reach its 1,000th issue next month. I think that there are 4 writers who have captured this character best, and the ones that I would share with any fan of this IP trying to get in. They're a pretty good spread of time, too, covering their own decades and have a lot of variety in their writing styles, depending on what you're looking for. You can read one or all 4 of the mentioned stories, and I think you'll have a great time. They are Ditko, Stern, Michaelini with an asterisk, and Straczynski without an asterisk. So, without further ado, let's start with the beginning of it all. Stan Lee and Steve Ditko worked as a pair telling the high school stories of Peter Parker, who just came off of his origin story in Amazing Fantasy 15. You can include that if you want, but I imagine if you found this video, you already know it. Flustered that his uncle just died to a negligence and a home robbery, a very worried Peter Palmer, wait, that must be a typo, but Peter Palmer, they did it again. Mr. Palmer worries about what is there to be done about his Aunt May's increasing financial responsibility. He tries to make a name for himself in show business by charging $1 to do some tricks, and kind of a flip. But this is shut down after he, one, can't cash a check because it was written out to Spider-Man, which, like, what was his idea? He could set up a legal entity known as Spider-Man that the proceeds could go to, but I imagine that'll still run into issues with no credible ID or the fact that he's 15. As well as it doesn't even matter as his act is shut down and lambasted in the newspaper by J. Jonah Jameson. I like knowing that he was here in the very first issue. He's such an integral part of Peter's mythos that really none of the other Spider people have copied. They all take aspects of the original story in one way or the other, but no one really has their own Jameson. So he tries to join the Fantastic Four by breaking into their building and beating them up as a sort of show of character and initiative. After they talk it out, they learn that the Fantastic Four is a non-profit organization and they have no room for salaries or employees. So that was a bust. Plus, Peter doesn't even really know if he'd fit in. They kind of got their own thing going. But again, it's really nice to see that their relationship starts here. Given how Peter is an honorary family member of the Four alongside characters like She-Hulk and Black Panther. It's nice. The rest of the issue deals with him begrudgingly saving Jonah's son from a failed rocket launch by riding on the back of this airplane. This doesn't do anything for his reputation though, only makes it worse. But it does get the attention of his very first villain, the Chameleon, who uses this spider-only frequency call to promise a profitable job to Peter. So do all spiders hear this, or is it just him and he knows to like channel it into his spider sense? I don't know. But realistically, you're not even supposed to really respond to those because any job listing that says be your own boss or unlimited potential earnings are usually just a Ponzi scheme. You should know better. But he goes over and is framed for a crime that Chameleon just committed dressed up as him. Luckily, Peter hitches a ride on his speedboat. I guess he stole this. Man, he's with a lot of vehicles in this issue. I guess they wanted to start establishing toy brand stuff. The Amazing Spider-Man and his canoe. Peter went on to have dozens of more issues, establishing nearly every supporting cast that we all know today. After issue 38, Ditko leaves the book and Stan Lee continues for another couple hundred issues. That Stan Lee solo run is really good, but I wouldn't include it in this reading order. This is more about just getting fans into the character more. And if you want something a little more concrete and established in the Marvel Universe, I would recommend the 1980s Roger Stern run, which could quite possibly be the best run for a character in an actual bucket list comic if you're just a fan of the medium in general. I would start with issue 206 as he guest writes, but I would really start with 224 all the way to 252. Yes, it's a really big jump from issue 38. I personally would not like to spoil much as I feel that it stands alone perfectly as a great read. Plus, it has some of my favorite villains in a prominent role, so that's a plus. You'll really come around to the Hobgoblin character if you never cared for him much in the past. I'd say this is my favorite Spider-Man run of all time. I'll reveal a ranking at the end. Next up, we have 1990s David Michelinie with that asterisk. The 1990s for Spider-Man is very iconic. Everyone adores it, but it gets a little long, and after a while, the story sort of falls apart despite having a pretty consistent writer all throughout. The book moved to a bi-weekly format around this time, so you can really see the strain it had on the team. So I'm going to make an executive decision and say stop around halfway through, whenever you feel it's right. We see the solidification of Peter and MJ's marriage, which is one of my favorite times in their relationship. She makes him a better person and grows from a supportive party girl to a pillar in his life. This panel was back from even before the Stern run, but I think it explains my thoughts fully. Mary Jane has every chance to leave this grieving Peter alone to mourn the death of Gwen Stacy, and then she stays. I think it's really well done, and that energy is carried all the way through the stories together, building their life. We also see the introduction of the symbiotes with Venom and Carnage, depending on how much you read. Venom has had a tumultuous history in general, spanning years. We're finally getting back on track this October with him being Eddie again. After getting tossed around between Mary Jane and him being the Carnage symbiote, and now Mary Jane is no longer Venom, and the Carnage is stuck with Spider-Woman, which is interesting. That's all a super long tangent and unrelated to this. If you're interested in symbiote stuff, this is the book to read. You'll see amazing artwork by Todd McFarlane. Everyone loves his work, and the big eyes. Todd specifically got his own Spider-Man book around this time called just Spider-Man, where he wrote and drew for, but it's not too good of a book and I wouldn't include it here. To touch a bit more on the main book, issue 299 ends with Mary Jane coming home and talking to herself as she's upset with Peter, but she's soon relieved that she hears him inside the apartment as she walks to the door, only it doesn't quite sound like him. Then boom. What a crazy splash screen to go in issue 300 with. Starting that issue, she's relieved to see the real Peter as she's lying stunned after whatever happened with her and Venom. Utterly mortified at that thing, and I don't blame her at all. Imagine if you come home and your husband's work uniform starts growing a mouth and taunting you. Peter then goes about his day after setting up MJ in a hotel to ease her worries. He's trying to investigate the thing, but his spider sense isn't triggering at all, so he thinks nothing of it. But in reality, he has a slight feeling that he's being followed. I think this is a genius touch as it really ups the stake in playing around with Peter's already established moveset, that this new villain is strong enough to just negate his spider sense. After touring a new condo to move into and having dinner with Aunt May, the issue seems like it's going to wrap up pretty nicely with Peter swinging home. And then we get this cool first-person shot of Venom as he attacks Peter. I love seeing the two symbiote suits fight each other. Obviously, Peter's is just a cloth variant that he's wearing at the time. I think it's still cool to see. We get awesome action scenes until Peter just shoots Eddie in the face with his borrowed sonic gun from the Fantastic Four. Venom is weak to sounds. But as it works for a couple seconds, Peter is then tied up in this church bell, like just right up in there. And he's held captive as Eddie does this Catholic routine. The symbiote morphs into a priest's gown, which I think is nice. And then after breaking free, he takes Eddie to the Fantastic Four to lock him up in a test chamber and meets with, who the fuck is this? The Thing? God, what was going on with him in 1988? What a jump from earlier in the video when we saw him in issue number 1. But he returns home to MJ to give the good news. She's still mortified at the costume he's wearing, given that it looks identical to Venom. So we see her suggest the grand return of the classic red and blue that hasn't been seen in a lot of issues, ending with this perfect shot of Peter swinging in the snow. I think this is an amazing way to start this new era. The 90s as a whole was a wild ride with huge story arcs after huge story arcs, some good, some bad. It really depends on how far you read. It really just depends on when you stop reading. You could go from 296 to 388, but let's arbitrarily say stop around 350. Obviously, feel free to stop whenever the marriage stories worsen or Venom gets overplayed, or continue if you like Carnage. But this one's a bit more fuzzy time in the history. Finally, we have the early 2000s with the JMS run, starting in 471. I think this is an impeccable run. It's so out there and plays with a lot of the mythology of this series, and it'll really make you hate that Madame Web movie for what they did to Ezekiel, who comes across Peter, who's letting off rage from the previous run, and he's shown to be a barefooted old man with the same spider agilities and powers as Peter does. He's sort of the call to action mentor type that gets this whole run started. It deals primarily with a battle between this villain named Morlun, who's an interdimensional vampire guy who's hunting all different types of spider people, and plays a lot with the idea of spider totems, adding a bit of mysticism and destiny into the character. I do like the idea that destiny and fate sort of correct themselves by having all of Peter's villains unintentionally be more animal-based to fit in with the spider totem, the theming. Clearly that wasn't the case in the 60s, they were just doing an animal thing, but it's an attempt and I like it. But they keep everything leading up to the story intact. It's not like the whole life has been planned out for him, it just sort of worked out this way. We see Peter at some of his lowest, both physically and emotionally, and we see some more favorable big swings like Peter becoming a teacher, Aunt May discovering his identity, joining the Avengers, and oh, yeah. This would have another asterisk with a controversial ending that I say just skip, but if you really want to know how truly bad this series can get, with the editorial forcing the writer's hands, I would say you kind of have to read the tail end of the series with the Civil War tie-ins and One More Day. If you'd rather keep your sanity, I'd stop at issue 500. That's where I sort of consider the true ending of this run to be. And that's right, issue 500. And they're about to release issue 1000. So technically half of his collective history is just skippable. It's not even including the stuff we bounced around in the early years. He's just too safe of a character in the moment. The writers aren't allowed to do really much with him. But that's not to say that there isn't books outside of the main ongoing. That's right, if you want smaller outside books, I recommend The Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker the Spider-Man, and Sensational Spider-Man. That last one I grew up with a bit as a kid.
I would like to add that I haven't read these, but I know a lot of the authors of the main book hop over there from time to time. They kind of bounce around and they all ran simultaneously, obviously for increasing revenue of having multiple books, etc. So the quality should be more or less what we've come to expect from these previous books, but I cannot say for certain of any quality outside of the trust I have in the previous writers. I just want to clarify.
Oh, yeah, the other Spider-Man. Yes, as a byproduct of the JSM run, it opened the floodgates to the Spider-Verse, a concept that really enforces the notion that anyone can be behind the mask. Some of my favorite alternative Spider-Man stories are the original Peter David 2099 book, an instant classic. Miles Morales has about 3 runs that are great, with a 4th one on the way. Spider-Gwen, Ham, Noir, anyone you've seen in the movies, you can just stick to my original pitch where you just grab whatever you'd like off the wall. It really is just Peter Parker who has the botched books. Oh, and I promised a ranking of all the runs. Stern's run is number 1, JMS is number 2, I'll give Ditko number 3, and as much as I love the Marriage and the McFarlane art, I'll give the early 90s spot 4. Again, this is just the top 4 of the countless runs that are out there, with a huge gulf between 4 and 5. Just read whatever you enjoy, and if you'd like to share some in the comments below, I'd love to hear what you've had.
But that's going to be it for this. Goodbye.